Hey, scrappy people. Tracy Reed here today, coming at you with a layout in my Life Crafted album using the Cocoa Daisy Lillian's Garden collection. I have a lot of paper scraps left over that I'm kind of wanting to try and incorporate into this page. And I have a tag and a card and some word bits pulled out for this lovely photo of my daughter's new haircut. And so, yeah, I'm thinking about, I don't know that I have too much journaling. I have journaling, but I think I want to hide it. I like to hide my journaling, as you know, and also it's a little bit private, not private, but you know, not everybody needs to read it all the time. So I'm going to probably create some sort of pocket to hide my journaling. I also want to do these paper strips. I have this tag pulled out that has the color blocking paper strips on it already. I don't know what I want to do with it. I'm not sure if I even want to keep it as a tag. I might cut the color blocks off and incorporate the blocking with this as well. I don't know. I have some ideas floating around in my head, but we're going to work it out together like we always do. All right, let's go. All right, so I pretty quickly had an epiphany, and sadly, the paper strips go by the wayside because I end up cutting down this tag into color blocks, like I said I wanted to do, and I didn't end up needing the rest of it. So, excuse me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create sort of a burst layout with these paper strips, and sadly, somehow, I ran out of space on my camera, so of course the actual laying down of the paper strips did not get recorded. But what I do is I just arrange them in a burst around the outside edge of the page, with the photo being the center of the page. So I am trimming down some of these paper strips to match, but I don't end up using a lot of them, sadly. All right, so you can see I've created a burst, and I roughed up all of the edges of the paper strips as well, just to give it a little bit more texture. I like the way that these clear acetate pieces go over the paper strips, and I really loved the sentiment of this this traveler's notebook card with this photo. This was my daughter turns 19 this week, actually, and this was her first real great affirming haircut. It made her feel so good. She's just been on cloud nine since she got it. So this sentiment of this card was absolute perfection for the photo. So I decided to use it to make the pocket for my journaling, and I'm going to use this watercolor card for the actual journaling, and I'll just either print or handwrite. I end up handwriting because I put something on this that makes it so I can't go through the printer, but I will just handwrite my journaling on this card, and it's tucked away nice and neat. I'm going to turn it into a tag, of course, just to make it a little bit more interesting. I created the pocket using red line tape. It's my favorite tape to use to create pockets because it's nice and thin, easy to control, and it sticks down really well. So it's not going to peel up the way that if you use like regular ATG tape, it might. So I want to use this sentiment as well. It says the greatest, something about standing out. The greatest thing you can do is like being yourself and not fitting in, which I thought was perfect too. So I'm going to put it on the bottom of this tag, because I really didn't want too much of the sentiments to conflict with each other. Now, I did tie the string on the tag from the collection. It was included in the classified memory keeping collection. There it goes. But of course it's not going to fit in there. I was just being a dork. It's not going to go in that pocket with that big old bow. So I did have a bit of a conundrum with this page because my daughter is not super flowery and girly. This color palette is already a stretch for her. So I didn't want to add in a lot of flowers, which is, of course, being the Lillian's Garden collection, has a ton of flowers. And so I wanted to create some embellishment and make it interesting without adding flowers. So I have these scalloped die cuts that I end up putting in between some of these paper strips. And then I pull out these buttons, which really didn't feel like it worked for this photo of a nearly 19-year-old girl. But I did make it work by tucking them underneath the photo so they just weren't so like in your face button. They're gonna go right over these acetate pieces. And I really wanted to use the black one, and I end up putting it down on top of the photo, but it just doesn't look good. It crowds her face too much when I put it down, so I do end up pulling it up, even though I do leave the process in here of me like putting it down, because what I end up doing is, because these holes on these buttons are so large because of the scale of them, I end up putting that string through the buttonholes. So you can see me trying to figure out this black button here. I end up cutting it in half because I thought maybe I would do the same thing that I did with the other buttons, but I end up not wanting it cut in half, so I put it back together instead. And that's why I initially stitched the button on top of the photo, because I wanted to cover up the fact that I had cut it in half. So you can see I've cut it in half, and it still is just, it's not working. I'm not getting a great vibe from the way that I'm using these buttons. So I'm on the struggle bus, but this layout just came out so beautifully. So it does end up working out in the end, but you know, sometimes we just gotta ride the struggle bus and we will get there. So I'm gonna put this down here, and I immediately regret it because it's just kind of weirdly crowding her face, and but it was stuck on the photo. So I decided to go with it and try to make it work. And I'm gonna use an awl to make big holes in the photo so that I can get that really thick string in those holes. And it does take quite a bit of effort to make it work, so I'm cutting out all of the struggle bus process for that. But I did the same exact thing with the plastic pieces and the buttons as well. It just took a minute, and I ended up making it work, but woo, it was a while. I really love the way that it looks in the buttons underneath the photo, but of course I was just not loving it here. It was just, I just put it in such a weirdly awkward place. But I'm gonna go with it for a little while before I end up changing it, but I am gonna change it, don't worry. Okay, so I'm still trying to make these buttons work. Then I realized that this will fit absolutely perfectly on this tag in that notch that I cut out with my circle punch. So I'm gonna put it right here, just sort of to repeat that button motif, and also just to make it a little bit more interesting and give you something to grab when you're pulling out the tag. And of course I stitched this with burlap as well, and then just to make sure that the button doesn't wiggle too much, I glue it down. Look at how cute that is. Oh, I love the way the buttons worked out eventually. Eventually that came together, hooray. So I'm still feeling like, what is happening here? There's not enough going on. I love the way that the burst looks, but it just still looks pretty plain. So I'm gonna struggle through all the embellishments right now until I settle on something else. So I'm gonna go with these hearts, and I'm like color blocking them, but they don't really match the colors very well, except for that green. And of course this one is wood, so it doesn't match any of the colors. And so I'm like, well, that idea is not gonna work. So instead, what I do is end up pulling out the glittery enamel dots and putting those on the paper strips instead. So I'm just adding the same-ish color to the strips, and I'm experimenting at the moment, trying to figure out where I want to put them. I end up putting a lot more down than what I want, and then I'm going to pull them back up again. So you can see I'm sort of alternating, trying to figure out where I want them to go. There's 2 paper strips in between each of those, and I think that's going to work. But here, let's try and add a couple more, see if we like all of them. No, that's too much. So I'm going to pull some off. All right, so I like it better on the more solid colors. So I left them on the green and the blue, and then that pink one up there, the pattern is not working. So I'm not sure. I just left it. I just, as an all-around struggle just to embellish this page, but we'll survive. I decided to pull off that button finally and put down these arrows. Instead, I'm going to put down 1. And then I decide that this will help. So instead of flowers, which I do end up adding a couple flowers, But instead of flowers, I'm gonna take these like eucalyptus branches and I'm gonna put them underneath the paper strips, because what I was really struggling with was, even though I didn't want to use flowers, there were flowers on the other side and it just looked odd to me to only have like a really florally motif on one side. So rather than like trying to incorporate some of the flower die cuts, I'm gonna take these rub-ons and I'm gonna put them in the background like they're paper strips. So they're gonna come out, they're gonna branch out underneath these paper strips, and that will bring that floral motif in from the right hand side to the left hand side. And I really think that that's what helped bring this together. So you can see how pretty that looks. And I decided that I do need a couple of flowers, so I'm gonna color block some flowers and I'm just gonna stick them up here in this top corner and in the bottom corner, just for a little bit of color behind these paper strips as well. So I'm just going to stick it up here. You don't really need to even worry about like where it's getting cut off, because it's definitely just background. So I just want that little pop of pink up there. And then on the bottom, I will repeat the process with a little pop of blue. And that really brought this page together. I am not gonna lie, it was a struggle for a while. I still don't love the spacing of the enamel dots, with that one up there being like not perfect in the pattern. It bugs me a little bit, but I couldn't put it on the smaller pink strip because it already had that like acetate over the top of it, so it wouldn't fit. But I'm just gonna let it go, and I'm not gonna be a perfectionist. I'm just gonna survive. But if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you. If you don't already, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'm at Tracy M. Reed. There's a link to Cocoa Daisy in the description box below if you're interested in starting a subscription, and I will see you next time. Thank you.